I think we should talk about the story that's got everybody in the Ukraine space just freaking out. I think we should be talking about this pro-Russian propagandist that got killed in the blast, the explosion in St. Petersburg. So I want to talk to you guys about Vladlen Tatarsky. For those of you who don't know, Vladlen Tatarsky is this guy you see on the screen right now. Here's another picture of him as a soldier in Ukraine who has been serving since 2014. He has also been serving in the recent offensive in Ukraine and a lot of the occupied territory. He's also a combatant. Most people know him as a military blogger, and that's why they say pro-Russian propagandist killed in blast in St. Petersburg. But something that was left out of much of these postings is the fact that he's not just a military blogger. This guy is also a soldier. I think this is important when analyzing, an assassination against this man, since he is an active combatant. Not when he was killed, he was behind the front lines in Russia, but he has been an active combatant in Ukraine in one capacity or another since 2014, when he was broken out from prison during the rebellion in the Donbass, when everything was going, when shit was hitting the fan. He was broken out from prison. He was in prison for robbing a bank. So that's the prestigious background of this propagandist. But ever since being broken out of the bank, he has been not only working as a soldier and fighting, he was pardoned by the Donetsk People's Republic for robbing a bank in 2014, even though they don't have the legal authority to pardon him, since it was a crime he was charged with by the Ukrainian government, and the Donetsk People's Republic is not the Ukrainian government. But they pardoned him, and ever since then he's been fighting for the Russians, and he's been acting as a propagandist for the Russians on Telegram channels, and he's gotten quite popular doing it. Gotten, I think, over 500,000 followers on Telegram. So he has been able to garner quite a reach in the short period of time, going from bank robber to Telegram poster to like semi soldier in Ukraine. But in that time, he has also said a lot of reprehensible things. And the reason I'm leading with some of the reprehensible things he said before we talk about how he got killed, the details and everything, is because a lot of times when people die, there's this effect that happens where we start to kind of, whitewash all the bad things they did, or we start to, overemphasize the good things they did, or we even try to erase the bad things they did, and we underplay the bad things they did. And I don't want that to happen to this guy, because I saw a lot of people saying, wow, what a fantastic journalist, just in reaction to this, probably with no knowledge of who this guy was before, but just like this kind of instinctual reaction from people that somebody died. Okay, everybody dig up their best moments and plaster them everywhere. But I want to make sure that if this guy's created into a martyr, much in the same way Daria Dugina was when she was killed in a similar bombing incident, in a car bombing incident, I want to make sure that we don't give this whitewashed version of events, history of this person who was killed. So when we talk about him being a journalist, I want to show you the type of journalism that he's engaged in. In this clip right here, I'll play it quickly.
Всех победим, всех убьем, всех кого надо ограбим. Все будет как мы любим. Давайте.
So this was when the annexation of a bunch of territory was getting announced by the Russian government. They were annexing Kherson, Zaporozhye, Donetsk, and Luhansk. And he took the opportunity to go on Telegram and talk about how that the Russians and himself, they will defeat everyone, kill everyone, and rob everyone. Everything will be as we like. That he was basically saying that the Russian military and himself will engage in whatever behavior is necessary in order to bring the Ukrainian government to its knees and in order to conquer Ukraine. It was him justifying basically any action that was necessary in order to win the war against the Banderite government in Kiev. But this is just like a small snippet of the million of like horrendous things he said that borders on like genocide, like genocidal language. When we talk about we will defeat everyone, we will kill everyone, or rob everyone, this is just a justification of horrific atrocities. but he's also tried to cover up the atrocities that has happened. But he's done it in an interesting way that a lot of other Russian propagandists don't. For example, let's check out this clip posted by Julia Davis. Julia Davis does really good work translating a lot of Russian propaganda into English so we can see it for the first time. I know a lot of people think, oh, well, we have Russia Today. We can just go watch that if we want to see Russian propaganda. But it's not that simple, because Russia Today creates Russian propaganda for an English-speaking audience, where Russia also makes Russian propaganda for a Russian-speaking audience, and that propaganda is very different, a lot more genocidal, a lot more hate-filled, a lot more bigotry, and a lot more steeped in fantasy. Since they can control the information space more concretely in the Russian propaganda sphere, it doesn't need to deal with things like fact checkers or critique or independent media, as it has to do sometimes when it publishes pieces in RT America, which has gone under since the start of the war. But it used to just be able to publish stuff there in a different style, in a different theme, because it knew it was going to get the type of pushback. But we didn't get to see stuff like this due to the fact that it was never meant for us. But due to the work of Julia Davis, we can see this type of work and the type of things they say. So here is something that he said while on this program about Bucha. Bucha was a horrific massacre in the Kiev Oblast after the Russians took this suburban city outside the capital of the nation. They engaged in what was called, and this is their own words, a cleansing operation, where they went door to door, executing people associated with the government or associated with the military. They ended up filling up mass graves, killing a lot of civilians who were just wandering around. And it was really just like summary execution. We have enough evidence to prove this 10 times over with satellite photographs, CCTV footage. We have phone data, audio recordings, witness testimony, physical evidence. I mean, the evidence is really unbelievably overwhelming. But this propagandist, despite all that evidence, put it to the side, and he pushed back on the idea that that Bucha was committed by the Russians. But after pushing back on the idea that Bucha was committed by the Russians, which it was, he then goes on to say that this image made by Russia due to Bucha could be useful. That these images we see in the West of the barbaric Russians who engaged in some horrific atrocity in Bucha, this is how he describes it. It could be useful because it's scary, it's intimidating. And so they should lean into it and they should use it because of how terrifying and scary it is. So this is the interesting thing about Russian propaganda. They want to have their cake and eat it too. On one hand, they didn't commit the crimes of Bucha. That was committed by Azov. That was committed by the Ukrainians, right? It was committed by them. But on the other hand, if people think we did it, we should capitalize on it and use it to terrify them. So they want to have the benefits of not having committed a war crime, as well as the benefits of having committed a war crime. So they want to be seen as the saviors and the heroes, the heroes that stopped the horrible Ukrainian banderites who did what happened at Bucha. But they also want to be seen as the people who did what happened at Bucha, because then it can come with some intimidation factor. They want to have their cake and eat it too. Let's look at what he has to say. Okay, 1 second, let's turn it down. There is blood all over the screen, and the title is Bucha, a feature film. I understand that all of it is trash, crap, intellectual and cultural waste. But I think with horror that it will make an impression, and there will be a total consensus about Bucha. How can we overcome this damn Bucha? What do we need to win? Let me interrupt you. Okay, so this is Vladlen. This is the guy who went kaboom. We need to use our enemy's strength against him. A German watching Bucha with the screen flooded with blood. His genetic memory will be triggered. A German could watch only if he still has electricity. He will remember stories his grandparents told him. We should add to that and say, yes, that's how we are. Fear us. Fear us, guys. You want to see us this way? We'll show you even more. Fear us. So this is, again, this is him wanting to have the benefits of having not committed the war crime. So saying, look at us, we're innocent, we're good people, we would never do that. But again, also the benefits of having committed the war crime. Fear us, we'll slaughter you, we'll murder you, we'll destroy you. We'll do whatever is necessary for victory. And that is, these are just like 2 clips of a long list of clips put out by this person, either trying to cover up war crimes, justify war crimes, brag about war crimes, or just actively advocate for more war crimes to be committed, either in the form of looting, murdering, etc. And so when people talk about this guy being a journalist, let's just be clear, this is the caliber of journalism we're talking about. And that's not to say that it can't be considered journalism in any degree, right? I'm sure he has posted pictures that are of some journalistic value at one point or another. But when we talk about the type of dialogue that was be posting on his Telegram on a bi-weekly, daily basis, this is the type of stuff we're going to see, either covering up war crimes, justifying war crimes, or advocating for war crimes. That's the type of quote-unquote journalist that this guy is. So now that we've gotten all that out the way, let's talk about how he died. So he died in a quite a strange way.
Burns is an immoral, morally corrupt, bankrupt man.
Trying to describe this without it sounding cartoonish is a little ridiculous, and I'm going to do my best to describe it without it sounding too cartoonish or ridiculous, as to not remove too much dramatic effect. No matter, thank you so much for the primer, appreciate that, 10 months. So he went to a cafe that just so happened to be owned by Prigozhin. For those of you who don't know, Prigozhin is the founder, is the current leader of the Wagner Group. The Wagner Group is a private military company that has become quite notorious for war crimes, including executing prisoners with sledgehammers, executing civilians, using rape as a weapon of war, all sorts of stuff. Not only in Ukraine, but also in the Central African Republic, I believe Libya as well, in Syria. They're an international private military company that fights on behalf of the interests of the Russian state. And so he was at Prigozhin's cafe in St. Petersburg. So that's an element to this that I think hasn't been talked about as much, is the fact that this is actually Prigozhin's cafe. This isn't just some random cafe. And while he was at that cafe, somebody walked up to him and gave him a statue of himself. And I guess, you know, him being a Russian propagandist, a Russian talking head, a former bank robber, becoming war crime advocate in Russian media, I can assume that he probably got a big head of himself. He looked at the statue, said, this is very cool. And photos and video from the time show that he took the statue of himself and then placed it besides his chair, and then went on to continue giving his speech, because he was speaking at this cafe. He was giving a speech to his Telegram followers, talking about the evil of the Banderites and the need to win the war. And then as the night went on, eventually the statue that was given to him exploded, because the statue that was given to him of himself was full to the brim of explosive material, C4. And so it went kaboom, and then he was killed by a statue of himself. That is actually how it happened. This isn't a meme. This isn't me joking. If you Google it, that's exactly how it went down. I said it in the most succinct way possible. Other people were injured. Nobody else died. We don't really have a full list of who was injured. I don't think the Russian media or Russian government has released that. I don't know if that's due to security reasons, because I would assume that many other people who were at this event were those involved with the war, or if it's just for the privacy of those who were injured. We don't know. If you're curious with how it looked like from the outside when it went kaboom, here it is. Here is it exploding. There's not really much to see here. It just explodes from the outside. We don't have any footage from the inside. Kills him, injures, I think the lowest number I saw was about 12 other people, and now he's dead. And so the first thing I saw people do in reaction to this, and when I posted this, I saw some people saying, Dylan, are you justifying this assassination of a journalist? I saw Glenn Greenwald coming out saying this terrorist attack against a journalist is absolutely horrendous. So let me just be quick. Number one, let's not just pretend he's only a journalist. He's also an active combatant in a war zone. He's been fighting in Ukraine since 2014, and he's been fighting in the recent operations as well, right? So let's not pretend that this is a guy who was sitting on the sidelines, who all he's ever done is speak, right? The Russians are very happy to go deep inside Ukrainian territory that is not on the front line and target buildings if it has Ukrainian military staff there or high value targets. And so I do want to just change the dynamics here and say it isn't just, oh, some random journalist got blown up. It was, oh, somebody who's a military blogger who's also an active combatant in a war zone got killed. Well, not in a war zone. Well, I would say Russia is technically a war zone. It's made itself a war zone through invading Ukraine. But that's an element to this I want to add. So this guy specifically getting targeted, I don't really care about too much. This is a lot easier to justify than the explosion with Daria Dugina, who was, somebody who, made excuses for war crimes and used pretty genocidal language, was also not at any point, as far as I'm aware, an active combatant in the war. So let's put that to the side for now. That's the first thing. Second thing is, you're not going to I don't think you're going to get me to endorse the method. I don't know if anybody wants me to endorse the method, but if you're doing a bombing like this, I'm always afraid of civilian casualties, because as much as I believe the Ukrainians have a right to resist, I'm always going to be fearful that bombings, things like car bombing, stuff like that, are going to turn up civilian casualties, because things like this are not very precise weapons. It's not precise. It's just going up to the guy, shooting him in the head, maybe trying to poison him or something like that. It's not an extremely precise method. But putting that aside, I just wanted to make sure we push back on the idea that this guy was just some like independent journalist who was, completely separate from the violent throes of history here, just covering it with a disinterested look or an unbiased critical look, trying to like record the history. So who did this? Who actually went out and got this guy killed? Well, there's a few theories. The leading theory for most people seems to be that it was the Ukrainian government, that the Ukrainian government wanted to kill this guy, and then they did. It was either some like intelligence not really intelligence operation, but it was some clandestine operation to kill him. The other theory is that it was actually internal, and while some people might laugh at that, Prigozhin, who is the person who actually owns the cafe that this happened at, has seemed to given this some air, saying that this might have been Russia's quote-unquote domestic enemies. Exactly what that translates into, I don't know. Whether that means the FSB or like some other quote-unquote resistance group or whatever that would mean. He seems to be giving them some credence. And there's also the fact that, this guy was at a Wagner cafe. It was Prigozhin's cafe. This guy is a huge supporter of the Wagner group, huge fan of Prigozhin. Not big surprise since he was at Wagner's campaign. He was at Prigozhin's cafe. Wagner and Prigozhin have been in the crosshairs of the Russian military establishment as of late. And according to Prigozhin, they've been getting targeted with just a lack of shell shipments, intensifying the shell hunger that they're facing, as well as a stop on their ability to recruit prisoners. Now, Prigozhin says this is because so many Americans signed up from their recent recruiting campaign in the States that they no longer need prisoners, but we all know that's a bunch of hogwash, and they've transferred these prisoner recruitment methods from Prigozhin over to the Russian military establishment. And so we know that there is some sort of strife between the Russian military establishment and Prigozhin. Prigozhin talks about this constantly. Prigozhin has been getting more and more critical of the Russian military establishment. The Russian military establishment has been getting more and more, been getting more and more cutthroat in how they're dealing with the Wagner group. So I don't want to completely dismiss the idea that this could have had a domestic political component to it. There's also, and I heard this as well on a few news programs, even though I don't know how likely this is, there is also the possibility of a false flag attack, this being that. Now, when I say those words, due to the people like Alex Jones, when you hear false flag attack, you just think conspiracy. And while it is technically a conspiracy, we know that the Russians have engaged in false flag attacks in this war so far. Verifiably, we know that they've engaged in false flag attacks in this war so far. I've covered them on my channel, not only at the start of this war, saying that the Ukrainians invaded them, posted footage of it in order to justify their invasion of Ukraine. Then when you go through the footage, you geolocate it. Oh, it's deep inside already occupied territory in the Donetsk Oblast. Looks like this could have only been filmed by Russian soldiers. Or more recently, there was a war crime that was recorded of Ukrainian soldiers speaking the worst Ukrainian you've ever heard in your life, abusing a woman and her child for randomly no reason at all, with all of this being able to get caught on the GoPro, but not really, because the GoPro is aligned and is in an angle where it shows nothing on camera. We did some research into it. Not only were there a ton of things in the video that were not consistent with the time it got recorded, like the color of the Ukrainian soldiers' armbands, the fact it was going through a checkpoint but had a GoPro, and that's very, very not allowed, and I can tell you that from my personal experiences in the country, but also, and this was the real killer, this is the final nail in the coffin, the fact that it was recorded again, and the Russians keep doing this, in occupied territory. Even the Russian military bloggers admitted how bad how much of a bad fake it was. But their problem with it was not, oh, you guys lied. The problem that we saw from Russian military bloggers was, you guys did not lie good enough, which is very concerning when it comes to the prospect of the truth succeeding in the Russian information space. If even when the supporters of the war figure out that the government is lying to them, their complaint is, damn, you should lie better next time. Not great. And people are talking about the Sims experiences as well, where the Russian government would like foil Russian Ukrainian terror attacks, and then they would find Sims cards, as in Sims the video game. And this is because some Russian officer told them when designing this false flag to use Sims. So you have Sims card there, like as in like a Sims card someone would have for like a phone, for like a camera, or, you know, for information to be held on it, but they misheard them, so they put the Sims video game there, and it's very humiliating. Yes, so we know that the Russian government does engage in false flags. We knew it does engage in false flags. We know this. This is verifiably true. We know this. And so there is those who are saying that this is a false flag to try to re-energize the Russian population for the war. Do I give this much credence? It's possible. I cannot discredit it. It's one of many possibilities, and we certainly do not know for sure who's at fault. So this woman who went into the building and handed it over to somebody else, who then handed it to the guy, and then the statue exploded. Some people are saying that it might be a Ukrainian. That this is going to, you know, this is going to lead to much anger in Russia, and this is going to lead to retaliations that are much worse than anything ever before, and that, you know, the Russians might escalate the war in reaction to this. So first off, I don't know how much the Russians can escalate the war any more than they have. They've already declared war, really. Well, they haven't officially declared war, but they're at war. I don't know if they're gonna, declare another war, go to war again. They're already at war with Ukraine. I don't know how much more they can raise tensions, right?
Burns is an immoral,
morally corrupt, bankrupt man. Stoic Squirrel, thank you for the tier 1 to be sub for 25 months. I don't know if, like, you expect them to, like, double up the war effort any more than they have. They've been going on for over a year, this conflict, this war, this invasion, when we talk about since February 24th, on top of the 8 years beforehand. I don't think that if they had any cards to play still, they would still be holding them in their back pocket for a moment like this. That's the first thing. The second thing is, somebody just sent me the footage from inside the cafe. The woman who handed him the statue, the woman who had the statue, handed it over to somebody to then hand it over to him. That woman, and you can see him looking at the statue right now. Here's him having a good time, like, oh my gosh, a statue of me. When she, God, dude, that thing's full of C4. It's so wild looking at this footage, knowing that thing is full of C4. the woman stays in the cafe. I don't know why she wouldn't leave after giving the statue. Like, oh, this is just a gift. I gotta go, something like that. And she's not like hiding in the corner waiting for the explosion. She's like near the front of the room. So this makes me think that maybe somebody could have used her and she was just a proxy, you know, that they just gave it to somebody else. Like somebody gave it to her, telling her that, hey, this is actually just a statue. Don't worry about it. We don't know yet. And that's the main thing I gotta say. That's her right there. See, she's smiling. She's having a good time. She doesn't look nervous. She's up at the front. She's not hiding in the back, away from where the explosion was. She is up at the front of the... It just doesn't make sense. Why would she be sitting so close to where the explosion is going to happen if she knew it was going to happen? If she knew, why wouldn't she stand further away, or why wouldn't she have left? And so that makes me think that she might have been used as a proxy by some other organization, either by the FSB, if this is more infighting between the Wagner Group and the Russian Ministry of Defense, if this was some domestic other force, like Prigozhin somewhat suggested, or even if it was the Ukrainian government. No matter who it was, I do have some suspicion on a personal level that she was used basically as a proxy. By the way, can I just say, very ugly statue. Very ugly statue of him. Just got to throw that out here. He's very easily flattered. My goodness. Video of the explosion that killed... Wait, so this actually has the footage of the explosion? Oh, it does. Oh, I didn't know it actually had footage of the explosion from this angle. Okay, let's play it. Let's play it. I assume you don't really see any... you don't really see anything because it's so quick. By the way, did you guys notice that Twitter has Doge as its symbol now, I guess? I don't know why Elon Musk did that, but Doge is now the symbol of Twitter, apparently. Okay, come on, let's play the video.
Настя, иди сюда. Золотой. Да, ну тут просто кубики.
And they slow it down, boom. And there you go. Okay. I don't really have much more to say about this story. I just want to throw out there that as much as people are trying to create this person into a martyr, this person was an active combatant in the war. This person actively tried to cover up war crimes, but then still wanted to profit off of them, as in using them to inspire fear in the nations and the enemies of Russia. He used near genocidal language, if not genocidal language, to talk about Ukraine. He openly advocated for war crimes, including looting, murder, and other war crimes against the Ukrainian people. And I don't really have much sympathy for him as an individual.
Morally corrupt,
I have basically zero sympathy for him as an individual. I don't see him as a journalist. I just see him as an out-and-out propagandist, justifying some of the most atrocious actions of the war while covering up those atrocious actions at the same time. Justifying, it's kind of like, you know, that thing, I remember, like sometimes you'll hear from people who are like neo-Nazis, the Holocaust didn't happen, but if it did, they deserved it, you know? It's the same thing in Serbia. What we did to the Bosnians, it didn't happen, but if it did happen, they deserved it. That's how he talks about Ukraine and the Ukrainian people. And so as people try to paint him as a martyr or just as like a run-of-the-mill journalist who didn't do nothing wrong, as people try to pretend that this guy was some saint, please remember the caliber of human being we're dealing with. Please remember the role in the war that he played. And also, don't get ahead of yourself when coming to conclusions about who did or did not do this attack, as there's still a lot of question marks in the air, and we still can wait a few more days for more information to come out before jumping to any conclusions.